So I want to share with you one of my favorite pictures of all time. As you look at it here, you see a big ship about to enter a big storm. And as you look at this ship, I like it because it's a model for life. I think some of us find ourselves on this ship. Maybe it's our life, our business, our team, our family. And the question going through our mind is how are we going to steer our life or our team to the right? But some of us may find ourselves on this ship, and maybe our plan says that we're going right to the left. Or maybe even worse, we waited too long to make a change. And the question going through our mind now is, how are we going to make it out alive? Some of you watching this video right now maybe find yourself smack dab in the middle of that storm. Maybe there's stress at home. Maybe there's stress at work, a death in the family, a divorce. And you're looking at friends and family or teammates that maybe have fallen overboard already. And the question going through your mind right now is it even worth it? Some of you have seen a storm like this come and go, and maybe you find yourself currently on the other end of that storm, and it's blue skies and it's past and things are okay. But the question now going through your mind is how are we going to repair the damage? Because going through a storm that big, something's going to break. So wherever you find yourself on this ship, the word courage is what comes to mind for me. And I'm always drawn to this word courage because it reminds me of a story about a young boy by the name of Jesse Arbogast. And at the time of this story, Jesse was 8 years old, and he went swimming with his uncle in the Florida Panhandle. His uncle was taking a nap on the beach, and Jesse was playing in about 3-4 feet of water. And his uncle wakes up to hear this gut-wrenching scream come from the water. His uncle looks down to see Jesse flailing about, surrounded by a pool of blood. And as fast as he can, his uncle runs down to the water, grabs Jesse, only to realize that a 6-foot bull shark had bitten off Jesse's arm. Jesse, who's now bleeding to death, is rushed back to shore. But for some reason, his uncle turns around, goes back in that water, finds the shark, and wrestles it to shore. State troopers killed the shark. They pulled out the arm, put it on ice, gave it to the doctors, and Jesse has function of his arm today. Now, I don't know about you, but I did see Jaws 3 in 3D, and the last thing that I would want to do is to go into shark-infested water after it just bit someone's arm off. But I guarantee you this, that you or anybody else watching this video would have done the exact same thing, and I want to prove it to you. But first of all, I want you to think for a minute. I want you to imagine somebody that means something to you. Maybe it's a young child, maybe it's a niece or a nephew. So hold that person in your mind for a minute, and we're going to play a little game. You may have seen those game shows on TV, like What Will You Do for Money? Like, here's a piece of gum on the floor, here's $20. You're like, oh, gross, I won't do that. Well, $200, you're thinking, maybe I'll try for $200, and you do it. Whatever your threshold is, we're going to play this little game. So I want you to imagine that I'm asking you these questions and whether you would do these things or not. And so I want you to imagine between you and I that we have about a 2-inch puddle of water, and I've got a $20 bill here, okay? And that $20 bill, if you get your shoes a little bit wet, grab the $20 and you have to walk back to your desk, would that be worth it for $20? My guess is it'd probably be worth it. And so now I want to raise the stakes a little bit. I want to make it about 10 or 20 feet deep. Let's say 15 feet deep, we'll be in the middle. And now you got to swim across and grab the $20, and you got to swim back, and you got to remain sopping wet the rest of the day. My guess is you probably wouldn't do it. And I would up the dollar amount to maybe $5,000. Let's just make it simple, $10,000. Would you do it? My guess is for $10,000, you get your clothes a little bit wet. Now, if you don't know how to swim, that's a whole nother example, but I'm going to assume that you know how to swim. So now you're at $10,000. Let's raise the stakes even more, and I'm going to turn this water into, let's say 38, maybe 39 degree water. Now, if you haven't been in that cold of water, I haven't, but from what I understand, it is blistering cold. It feels like needles and knives, and your muscles don't work that fast. You're going to risk hypothermia. It's quite a shock to the system. And now you got to swim 20 feet in this water, grab the $10,000, and swim back and risk hypothermia. Would you be willing to do it? I'll tell you, I've asked this question to many, many people, and some do and some don't. But let's make it simple. Let's say I raise that to $100,000. And you jump in and you get it back. Maybe somebody's waiting for a blanket and a heater, and you're going to be just fine. So now, let's raise the stakes even one more time, and we're going to make the temperature of the water normal. But in this water, we're going to add, let's say, 40 sharks in the water. And you've got to swim across this shark-infested pool and grab the $100,000. Now, this is what's interesting about this, is that I'm having a conversation with your brain. Your brain is doing a very simple cost-benefit analysis. It's asking itself, What's going to happen if I jump in there? Is it worth the risk? That's happening in this part of the brain right here called your prefrontal lobe. Your prefrontal lobe is the last part of the brain to develop. It doesn't even fully develop till age 25. And what's interesting is about how this brain makes a decision. This brain makes a decision by having a connection back to a deeper part of our brain called the limbic system. And the limbic system is in charge of your value center. So as I'm asking you this, you're thinking, wow, $100,000, jump in this shark-infested pool, I may risk my life, but your prefrontal lobe might kick in and say, well, what kind of sharks are these? Well, if I were to tell you they're nurse sharks, that they look scary, but they're pretty docile unless maybe they're hungry and you mess with them, would it be worth it? My guess is that a few of you might want to do this. Most of us, if you're like me, probably wouldn't want to do it. But so let's raise the stakes. Let's go up to $1 million. And if you're still not jumping in, maybe $10 million. And for those of you who have jumped in, let me tell you a little bit more about these sharks. These sharks haven't eaten in about 3 or 4 weeks, and they look like this. Great white sharks. Now, I don't know about you, but our prefrontal lobe's probably making a prediction, is that if you jump in that water, you're going to die. And so my guess is that no matter what dollar amount I offer you, you're not going to jump in with those sharks. And you know what? That's a good thing, because your brain is making a prediction. It's making a prediction that you will die. And in fact, our brain has a number one task. The first job of the brain is to keep us alive. And so I would tell you that your brain, if you said, no, I'm not going in there, bravo, your brain works well. Now here's the challenge. Not all of the time does this brain system work correctly. So I want you to think about it and our brain working in this way in what we call the stress continuum. I want you to think about our brain interpreting stress from a scale of 1 to 10, where maybe we're at a 1 and we're fine, everything's happy. Maybe we're to a 5, we're late for work, but a level 10, that means death. So ask yourself, where would you put the shark? My guess is at a 10. If that's right, then that means your brain is working correctly. But I also know people that this part of the brain doesn't work correctly. If you know some of these daredevils, people that have literally thrown a parachute out of an airplane without wearing it to jump out after it and chase it down, they don't associate that to a 10. Not to me is beyond a 10. To me, heights are at a 10. In fact, I've got some other ones that I'll share with you in a second. But for in this case, if you didn't go in, that means it worked well. But for not all of us, it works well. If you have a phobia, if you know somebody who does have a phobia, or maybe you're scared of something or public speaking, that's the part of the brain that tells you that you have a level 10 stress, but it won't kill you. That is a malfunction. I'll share with you mine. I have a very horrible phobia of what I call this flying bug of death over here. And thank God I'm not really seeing this thing over here, because if I was, I'd probably be running. In fact, we had an incident as we were filming this video where everything was going great, and all of a sudden all we hear is bzzz, bzzz, and I begin to sweat. I'm trying not to notice this thing. I thought it was a fly, and then I was told it was a bee. Now, when I was 14 years old, I was stung 27 times by a bee. I'm not allergic to bees, have no problem, no physical illness result to it, but it was embarrassing, it was painful. And now, every single time I see a bee, I go immediately into System 1 and I respond. This bee will not kill me, but my brain and my body is responding as if. And so when we look at this process and this level 10 stress that causes the System 1 response, I want you to look at why we use a picture of a shark. So take a look at this shark. The reason we use a picture of a shark is because the brain does not know what a shark is. The brain knows that the teeth and the carcass and the old Jaws music, all of that stuff caused fear. And all of that caused fear to think, you know what? We need to remove ourselves from that fear. Stress levels went high, and that means death, so we avoid it. So that actually works well. But the brain doesn't know what a shark is. It only knows that level of stress. And so I ask you this question. What are the things in your life, in your work, in your business, at work, play, at home, cause you a level 10 stress that won't kill you? A lot of the answers we get are the simple one, public speaking. Public speaking is not going to kill you, but it is one of the greatest fears of our human existence. Whatever it is, sometimes those things that causes level 10 won't kill us are the things that are holding us back. So let's get real. Anytime we approach a change in behavior, if you're trying to lose weight, if you're trying to quit a bad habit, say smoking, it's not the behavior that does, it's the stress of the change that makes it so difficult for us. So we go back into that System 1, it really comes down to stress. Really what we're looking for here is the solution or the answer that we're looking for to get us to overcome some of these difficult things in our life, to get us to engage in the changes that we need to engage, to get even companies to make the changes they need to make. The answer is found in our ability to either reduce the perception of a shark, which means reduce the stress of the shark, or help people manage themselves through it, or engage into something that's even more valuable. I asked you a question when we first began this. I tried to pay you money to jump in the shark-infested pool. And my question was to you, think of somebody that means something to you. Maybe it's a young child. Maybe it's a family member. And imagine them sitting on the edge of this pool and they slipped and fell in that shark-infested pool. What would you do? If you're like everybody else, my guess is you'd be in the water. You wouldn't have thought twice. You probably wouldn't have even given your own life a second thought. What happened there was your limbic system kicked in, which houses your values. Your limbic system has 35,000 times more neurons to drive behavior change. It bypassed system 1. It got you into an emergency fight-flight mode to protect that which was most valuable to you, which was your family. Now, are we saying that we want to use a drastic example of this every time we cause change? Not at all. But I wanted to create that. Remember, I said, be a student of your own experience. What did you feel when you imagined that person falling in that pool? That sense of clarity, that sense of purpose. And I'll leave you with this question, is what if every decision, every action, every goal was that clear? What if you could tap into that part of you to achieve the things that you wanted to achieve? That's really what we're talking about.